When we talk about trauma, we are not simply referring to painful memories or emotional wounds. Trauma is a profound experience that can change the way our brain functions. It is the body and mind's response to overwhelming stress, often resulting from experiences that threaten our sense of safety, control, or identity. What's fascinating and equally heartbreaking is that trauma does not just live in our thoughts. It reshapes the physical and chemical structure of the brain. When someone experiences trauma, the brain moves from a state of calm regulation to one of survival. The key player in this process is the amygdala, often called the brain's alarm system. Its job is to detect threats and activate the fight, flight, or freeze response. In a moment of danger, this reaction is crucial for survival. However, after trauma, the amygdala can become overactive. It starts to misread everyday experiences as potential threats, leaving the person in a constant state of alertness or fear even when no real danger exists. This is why trauma survivors may feel anxious, irritable, or easily startled without knowing why. Another brain region affected by trauma is the hippocampus, which helps organize and store memories. It acts like a librarian for our experiences, distinguishing between what is happening now and what happened before. When trauma strikes, high levels of stress hormones such as cortisol flood the brain and damage the hippocampus. This can make it difficult for survivors to tell the difference between past and present danger. A simple sound, smell, or situation might trigger a flashback that feels just as real as the original event. Because the hippocampus cannot properly process these memories, traumatic experiences remain raw, vivid, and easily reactivated. At the same time, trauma weakens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, decision-making, and emotional control. When this part of the brain shuts down under stress, logical thinking gives way to instinct. Survivors might struggle to make decisions, concentrate, or manage their emotions because the brain is prioritizing survival over rationality. This imbalance explains why trauma can make people react impulsively, lash out in anger, or shut down completely. It is not a lack of willpower, it is the brain's attempt to protect itself from being overwhelmed again. Together, these changes create a brain that is wired for protection rather than connection. The person may appear distant, detached, or emotionally numb. Relationships become difficult because trust feels dangerous. The body, constantly flooded with stress hormones, can also suffer, leading to fatigue, chronic pain, digestive issues, or a weakened immune system. In short, trauma doesn't just hurt the mind, it reshapes the entire body's functioning. What makes this understanding so important is that it replaces judgment with compassion. When we recognize that trauma alters the brain, we can stop blaming survivors for their reactions. Instead of asking, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" we can begin to ask, "What happened to you?" This shift in perspective opens the door to healing. It allows people to see their symptoms not as personal failures, but as natural responses to extraordinary pain. Modern neuroscience gives us hope. The brain's ability to change, called neuroplasticity, means that these traumatic imprints are not permanent. With time, therapy, and safe relationships, the brain can form new neural connections that promote calm and resilience. Healing begins when the body and brain relearn that the world is not always a dangerous place. Each act of self-care, mindfulness, or emotional connection helps the amygdala quiet down, strengthens the hippocampus, and reactivates the prefrontal cortex. The same brain that once learned to survive can learn to thrive again. Understanding what trauma does to the brain is the first step toward breaking its silent hold and reclaiming a sense of safety and control over one's life. Healing from trauma is not a quick fix or a single moment of realization. It is a gradual process of retraining the brain and body to feel safe again. When trauma has disrupted the normal functioning of the mind, the pathway to healing involves rebuilding trust, connection, and regulation. The human brain is remarkably adaptable due to neuroplasticity, the ability to form new neural connections throughout life. This means that even when trauma has rewired the brain for fear and hypervigilance, it is possible to rewire it again for calm, safety, and connection. Healing, therefore, is not about erasing the past, but about teaching the brain and body that the past is over and that the present can be different. One of the most powerful tools for healing trauma is connection. Isolation strengthens the effects of trauma, while safe and supportive relationships can help repair the brain's emotional circuitry. When a person feels genuinely seen, heard, and accepted, their nervous system begins to relax. This sense of safety releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone which helps calm the amygdala and reduce stress responses. Conversations that involve empathy, gentle touch, or eye contact can begin to reprogram the brain to associate human connection with safety rather than danger. This is why trauma cannot always be healed alone. It often requires the presence of others who can offer compassion and stability when our own nervous systems cannot. Therapy also plays a vital role in the healing process. Trauma-informed therapies are designed to help the brain integrate painful memories in a safe and manageable way. For instance, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing (EMDR) allows individuals to revisit traumatic experiences while stimulating both sides of the brain, helping to reduce the emotional intensity of the memories. Somatic experiencing focuses on the body's sensations, teaching people to release the physical tension that trauma leaves behind. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, helps reframe negative thoughts and beliefs that develop during trauma, creating healthier patterns of thinking. Through therapy, the brain begins to connect new associations to old experiences, gradually transforming fear into understanding and helplessness into control. In addition to professional support, mind-body practices are essential for recovery. Trauma is stored not only in memories, but also in the nervous system. Activities like mindfulness meditation, yoga, deep breathing, or journaling help individuals reconnect with their bodies in gentle, non-threatening ways. Mindfulness, in particular, trains the prefrontal cortex to stay engaged even in moments of stress, improving emotional regulation. By paying attention to the present moment, survivors can slowly retrain the brain to stop reacting as if danger is constant. Yoga and other movement-based therapies release built-up tension, calm the vagus nerve, and restore balance to the body's stress response systems. Over time, these practices teach the body that it can experience calm without needing to be on high alert. Self-compassion is another cornerstone of healing. Many trauma survivors carry feelings of guilt, shame, or self-blame. These emotions reinforce the neural pathways of fear and unworthiness. Learning to treat oneself with kindness begins to change that internal narrative. When a person responds to their pain with understanding rather than criticism, they activate the same neural circuits that promote healing and connection. Self-compassion reminds the brain that safety can come from within, not just from external sources. Healing from trauma is not linear. There will be days of progress and days that feel like setbacks. But each moment of awareness, each breath taken with intention, and each act of kindness toward oneself is proof that healing is happening. The brain's ability to change means that no matter how deep the wounds are, new pathways of peace and resilience can always be built. It takes patience, courage, and support, but over time, the same brain that once lived in fear can learn to live in freedom. Healing from trauma is deeply connected to the mind-body relationship. Trauma does not only live in memories or thoughts, it embeds itself in the body's nervous system. When someone experiences trauma, their body learns to respond as if the danger is still present. The muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow, and the heart rate increases. Over time, this constant state of alertness becomes the new normal, and the body forgets how to relax. Healing, therefore, requires not only talking about the trauma, but also helping the body unlearn its habitual responses to fear. The process involves gently teaching the nervous system that it can feel safe again. Mind-body practices such as mindfulness, yoga, deep breathing, and journaling are powerful tools in this process. Mindfulness helps individuals become aware of their internal experiences without judgment. When a person can observe their emotions and bodily sensations rather than react to them, they begin to regain control over their nervous system. For instance, when someone practices mindful breathing, they send signals to the brain that the body is safe, which in turn calms the amygdala and lowers stress hormones. This creates a feedback loop of safety. The body calms the mind, and the mind reinforces the body's sense of peace. Yoga offers another pathway for healing because it integrates movement, breath, and awareness. Trauma often disconnects people from their bodies. They may feel numb, detached, or uncomfortable in their own skin. Through yoga, individuals learn to inhabit their bodies again in small, manageable ways. The slow, intentional movements help release stored tension, while deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural relaxation response. Over time, yoga teaches the body to associate movement and sensation with safety instead of threat. Studies have shown that trauma survivors who practice yoga experience reduced anxiety, fewer flashbacks, and an increased sense of control over their physical and emotional states. Journaling also plays an important role in healing. Writing allows individuals to express feelings that may be too difficult to speak out loud. When someone writes about their experiences, the act of putting emotions into words helps organize the chaos of traumatic memories. It engages the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic and reasoning, which helps make sense of overwhelming emotions. Over time, this process helps the brain reframe the story of trauma from one of victimhood to one of survival and strength. Journaling can also highlight patterns and triggers, allowing individuals to understand themselves better and respond to their emotions more compassionately. Breathwork is another essential element in regulating the effects of trauma. When we are scared or anxious, our breathing becomes rapid and shallow, signaling danger to the brain. By practicing deep, slow breathing, we reverse that signal. Techniques like diaphragmatic breathing or alternate nostril breathing activate the body's relaxation response, reducing cortisol levels and heart rate. Regular practice can recondition the nervous system to remain calm even in stressful situations. All of these mind-body practices share a common goal: to restore balance to the nervous system and reestablish the connection between body and mind. Healing trauma is not just about processing what happened, but about teaching the body that it no longer has to live in survival mode. The more we engage in practices that promote calm and presence, the more we strengthen neural pathways associated with safety and resilience. Through consistent practice, the brain begins to form new patterns. The amygdala quiets down, the prefrontal cortex becomes more active, and the hippocampus starts to properly distinguish between past and present. The body gradually learns that it can experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them. This integration of mind and body is what transforms trauma into healing. It allows individuals not just to survive their experiences, but to rediscover a sense of peace, empowerment, and connection within themselves. Self-compassion is one of the most powerful and transformative elements in the healing journey after trauma. When people experience trauma, they often develop harsh inner voices filled with guilt, shame, and self-blame. They may replay the event in their minds, asking themselves what they could have done differently or why they did not prevent it. These thoughts create an internal battlefield where the survivor becomes both the victim and the judge. What makes healing so difficult is not only what happened, but also how a person learns to speak to themselves afterward. Self-compassion becomes the bridge that allows individuals to move from self-criticism to self-acceptance, from pain to peace. Trauma can distort a person's sense of self. The brain's protective mechanisms, meant to keep one safe, can also reinforce negative beliefs. When the mind is constantly in survival mode, it looks for reasons to justify pain. This can lead to thoughts like, "I'm weak, I deserved it, or I'll never be okay again." These beliefs are not truths, they are defense mechanisms shaped by fear and confusion. Self-compassion challenges those narratives by inviting a person to treat themselves with the same kindness they would offer to a loved one in pain. It is the practice of recognizing suffering without judgment and offering understanding instead of rejection. Practicing self-compassion begins with awareness. Many trauma survivors are not even conscious of the harsh ways they speak to themselves because that inner dialogue has become habitual. The first step is noticing when the inner critic appears and pausing before accepting its words as facts. Instead of reinforcing negative self-talk, one can learn to respond with gentleness. Phrases like "it's okay to feel this way" or "I'm doing my best right now" may seem small, but over time they help rewire the brain to respond to distress with calm instead of criticism. This shift activates the prefrontal cortex, helping regulate emotions and reduce the amygdala's threat response. In essence, self-compassion becomes a neurological exercise that teaches the brain to associate self-awareness with safety, not danger. Another important aspect of self-compassion is accepting that healing is not a linear process. There will be good days and difficult days, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. Survivors often feel frustrated when they think they are moving backward after progress. But this is a natural part of recovery. Trauma recovery is like rebuilding a house after an earthquake. The foundation must be strengthened before new walls can stand. Self-compassion means giving oneself permission to move slowly, to rest when necessary, and to understand that healing cannot be rushed. Every setback can be viewed not as failure, but as a reminder that healing is ongoing and non-linear. Self-compassion also involves forgiveness, not necessarily forgiveness toward those who caused harm, but forgiveness toward oneself. Many survivors carry guilt for how they reacted during trauma or how it changed them. They may feel ashamed for feeling weak, angry, or numb. Yet these are normal human responses to unbearable pain. Forgiving oneself does not mean forgetting or excusing the past. It means acknowledging that the responses that once helped us survive may no longer serve us today. Letting go of self-blame frees mental and emotional energy that can now be used for growth and peace. Over time, self-compassion builds resilience. When people treat themselves with care, their nervous systems begin to stabilize. They develop greater emotional flexibility and can handle stress without becoming overwhelmed. Compassion literally changes the brain's wiring, reinforcing neural pathways that promote calm, empathy, and connection. It also opens the door to trusting others again, because when a person feels safe within themselves, they are more able to form healthy relationships with others. Ultimately, self-compassion teaches that being human means being imperfect, vulnerable, and resilient all at once. It reminds survivors that they are not broken, but in the process of becoming whole again. Every act of kindness toward oneself, every gentle thought, every patient breath, every moment of grace becomes an act of healing that transforms pain into strength. Trauma has the power to shape a person's life, but it does not have the authority to define it. Healing is a process of reclaiming that power and rediscovering one's capacity for peace, joy, and connection. When someone has lived through trauma, the world can begin to feel unsafe, unpredictable, and overwhelming. Their brain and body have learned to expect danger, to stay alert at all times, and to avoid vulnerability. Yet as healing unfolds, the nervous system begins to unlearn these patterns. Through therapy, self-awareness, and compassionate connection, the same brain that once lived in survival mode can be guided towards safety. This transformation does not erase what happened, but it rewrites the relationship one has with the past. The pain becomes part of the story, not the whole of it. Healing begins with understanding that survival itself is an act of strength. Many trauma survivors minimize what they have endured, believing that their pain is not significant or that they should have moved on by now. But survival is not something to overlook. It is evidence of resilience. Every time the body protected itself, every time the mind found a way to endure, it was acting out of an instinct to live. Recognizing that strength is a vital step in recovery. It allows survivors to see themselves not as damaged, but as enduring. This change in perspective is deeply healing because it restores dignity and self-worth, which trauma often strips away. As healing continues, people begin to notice moments of calm where there was once chaos, laughter where there was once silence, and trust where there was once fear. The brain starts to build new neural pathways of safety through repeated experiences of peace. This is the essence of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt. When survivors engage in therapy, mindfulness, supportive relationships, or creative expression, they are teaching their brains that safety and connection are possible. Over time, the amygdala becomes less reactive, the prefrontal cortex strengthens its control, and the hippocampus resumes its role in distinguishing between past and present. The body learns to breathe freely again. However, healing is not about pretending the trauma never happened. It is about integrating the past into one's life story in a way that brings meaning rather than pain. The memories remain, but they lose their power to control the present. People who have experienced trauma often develop deep empathy and wisdom. They understand suffering, which allows them to connect more genuinely with others. Many use their experiences to help others heal through art, advocacy, teaching, or simply listening. In this way, what was once a source of pain becomes a source of purpose. Trauma, when healed, can become a foundation for compassion and strength. Healing also involves recognizing that one does not have to do it alone. Connection is essential because trauma thrives in isolation. Safe relationships remind the nervous system that trust can exist again. Whether through friends, family, support groups, or therapists, being witnessed in one's pain can bring profound relief. When others hold space for someone's story without judgment, the brain begins to register safety and human connection once more. One of the most transformative realizations in trauma recovery is that healing is not a destination, but an ongoing practice. It requires patience and gentleness toward oneself. There may still be days when old fears return or emotions feel overwhelming. But these moments no longer signal defeat. They are opportunities to practice resilience. Each time a survivor chooses calm over chaos, compassion over criticism, or connection over avoidance, they reinforce the brain's new pathways towards safety. Ultimately, healing from trauma is a reclamation of life. It is the process of remembering that one is more than what happened, that peace is possible, and that strength can coexist with vulnerability. The human brain and heart are capable of extraordinary recovery. Even after the deepest wounds, people can rebuild themselves into beings of courage, empathy, and hope. Trauma may have shaped the beginning of the story, but healing has the power to transform its ending into one of renewal and strength. Healing from trauma is not a single act, but a lifelong journey of rediscovery. It involves rebuilding trust in oneself, in others, and in life itself. When someone has lived through trauma, their world often becomes divided into two parts. Before and after the event, the mind and body adapt to survive, creating patterns of fear, avoidance, or hypervigilance. Over time, these survival strategies can become barriers to growth. Healing requires patience, courage, and consistent effort to move beyond survival and into a state of genuine living. It is a gradual process of learning that safety, peace, and joy are possible again. One of the first steps in this process is acceptance. Many trauma survivors struggle with denial or resistance, hoping to forget or erase the past. But healing cannot occur without acknowledging what happened. Acceptance does not mean approval or resignation. It means recognizing reality without letting it define the future. When people accept their pain, they stop fighting their own emotions and begin to make space for healing. This acceptance activates the higher functions of the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotions and restore a sense of control. It also allows the hippocampus to properly integrate memories, turning fragmented experiences into coherent narratives. In this way, acceptance transforms chaos into understanding. Consistency is another crucial part of healing. The brain learns through repetition, and the nervous system needs regular experiences of safety to rewire itself. Simple practices such as maintaining a routine, spending time in nature, practicing mindfulness, or engaging in creative expression can create a sense of stability. These repeated acts of care signal to the brain that the danger is past. Over time, they strengthen neural pathways associated with calm and resilience. This is why even small, consistent efforts can produce profound changes. Healing rarely happens in sudden breakthroughs. It unfolds quietly through daily moments of self-care and awareness. Forging a connection between body and mind is essential as well. Trauma disconnects the two. People may feel detached from their physical sensations or avoid emotions that remind them of the past. Reconnecting the body and mind through practices like yoga, breathing exercises, or gentle movement helps release the tension that trauma stores in the body. It teaches the nervous system that it can feel sensations without being overwhelmed. The more a person learns to inhabit their body safely, the more grounded and present they become. This embodiment is not just physical, it's emotional and spiritual too. It allows individuals to experience life fully again rather than merely enduring it. Support from others is another cornerstone of long-term healing. Safe relationships offer a corrective emotional experience. When a person is met with empathy, patience, and understanding, their brain learns that connection can exist without fear. This helps repair the attachment wounds that trauma often creates. Having a support network, whether through therapy, friendships, or community, provides reassurance that healing does not have to happen in isolation. Sharing stories, expressing emotions, and being seen in one's truth all contribute to restoring trust in human connection. Perhaps one of the most profound parts of healing is the rediscovery of meaning. Trauma can leave people questioning everything, their purpose, their worth, and the fairness of life. But as recovery progresses, many survivors find new depth and insight. They may develop compassion for others, a greater appreciation for small joys, or a renewed sense of purpose. This transformation does not erase pain, but it gives it meaning. When suffering becomes a source of strength or empathy, it no longer controls the narrative. Instead, it becomes part of a story of resilience. Ultimately, the journey of healing from trauma is about reclaiming wholeness. It is about remembering that beneath the layers of pain, fear, and survival, there is still a self that is strong, capable, and deserving of peace. Every act of self-care, every moment of courage, every breath taken with awareness is a step toward freedom. Healing may take time, but with compassion, consistency, and support, the human spirit has an incredible capacity to rebuild and thrive beyond trauma.